The drama began not with a basket, not with a buzzer, but with a finger pointed toward the crowd. Alicia Gray of the Atlanta Dream turned mid-play, locked eyes on a section of Indiana Fever supporters, and signaled for security. In seconds, the cameras cut away, fans were escorted out, and the playoff game took on a sudden uncomfortable tension. It looked serious, almost scandalous. A player, in the middle of one of the most important nights of the season, had accused a fan of crossing the line. For those watching at home, it seemed like the kind of moment that would dominate headlines the next morning. But what unfolded after the fact told a very different story. The ejection appeared decisive on live TV. Fans stood confused as arena staff guided them toward the exits. The broadcast didn't linger, almost as if the league itself wanted the matter pushed aside. But for anyone in the stands, the sequence was jarring. The comments that had supposedly sparked the players' reaction were ordinary words of encouragement to Lexi Hull, not insults hurled at Gray. Within minutes, whispers spread that something didn't add up. Security, after speaking with the fans, allowed them to return to their seats. What had first been presented as a serious incident dissolved into something that looked suspiciously like frustration boiling over. The controversy exposed a harsh contrast. On one side, a team clinging to excuses and mixed narratives. On the other, a team too busy rewriting its own history on the court to be distracted. While the Dream scrambled to explain why their star had pointed into the stands, the Fever were busy snapping a near-decade playoff drought in front of a roaring home crowd. The juxtaposition was impossible to miss. Atlanta wanted sympathy. Indiana wanted victory. Only one of those things mattered when the final buzzer sounded. In the aftermath, different versions of the story began circulating. Some media outlets painted the fan interaction as more personal, more serious than light heckling. Others reported it was nothing out of the ordinary, exactly the kind of back-and-forth athletes hear nightly. Eyewitness accounts confirmed the latter. One person sitting nearby insisted all that had been said was, "You're good, Lex. She's not even trying anymore." It was encouragement for Hull, not an insult for Gray. Somehow, that simple phrase triggered a scene that escalated into security removing paying supporters. For a league that claims to value fan engagement, it was a damaging look. By the end of the night, the story no longer held weight. The fans were back in their seats. Security had apologized, and the Fever were doing what mattered, taking control of the game. Clips of the interaction still spread online, sparking ridicule more than sympathy. Commentators highlighted how out of proportion the reaction seemed. Fans vented that the league doesn't appreciate them, that they've been thrown out for trivial reasons while players routinely complain about the people who buy tickets. The whole episode seemed like an unnecessary distraction, one that painted Gray as unable to handle routine playoff energy. But the more Atlanta looked rattled, the more Indiana looked composed. The Fever had every excuse to fold. Caitlin Clark was ruled out for the season. Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson, Chloe Beebe, and A.R. McDonald were unavailable. Nearly half the rotation had vanished before the ball even tipped. For most teams, that would mean defeat. But for Indiana, it was fuel. Gainbridge Fieldhouse hadn't hosted a playoff game since 2016, back when Tamika Catchings was the face of the franchise and Stephanie White was still pacing the sideline. For a city starved of postseason basketball, this was redemption night. Inside the arena, the atmosphere was electric. Red, Now You Know shirts covered the lower sections, and the energy built from the opening introductions. Fans didn't just cheer baskets. They roared through defensive stops, celebrated hustle plays, and turned every loose ball into a rallying cry. Coach White had told her players that desperation had to define their effort. In Game 1, she said, that mentality had been missing. In Game 2, it was impossible to miss. From the first quarter, the Fever looked hungrier. Their rotations were crisp, their rebounding sharper, their chemistry undeniable. And on the bench, Caitlin Clark embodied leadership. Smiling, cheering, standing for every defensive stand, her energy spread across the roster. Even without scoring a single point, her presence was everywhere. It showed in the way Aaliyah Boston battled inside. Her footwork and strength gave Indiana stability in the paint. It showed in Kelsey Mitchell's fearless shooting, burying threes and driving hard to the rim. It showed in Natasha Howard's gritty two-way effort, in Lexi Hull's relentless defense, in Michaela Timpson's poise as a rookie delivering 9 vital points. Every player decided this game would be won collectively, and it transformed what could have been a deflating night into a statement victory. The turning point came late in the third quarter. Boston muscled in a score inside, reminding everyone why she was the anchor. Moments later, Shaw Petty jumped a passing lane for a steal, sending the building into a frenzy. Then, as the clock expired, Hull launched a deep three. It dropped clean through the net, and the noise inside Gainbridge became deafening. That sequence shifted everything. Atlanta never recovered. A game that had hovered in striking distance for most of the night suddenly tilted into a runaway, the Fever surging into the fourth quarter with all the momentum. Mitchell finished with 19 points, her quick first step punishing defenders who tried to crowd her. Boston added 15 steady points with 5 rebounds, her balance keeping the offense grounded. Howard chipped in 12 with key defensive stops, while Hull's energy and defense frustrated Gray at every turn. Even Timpson, in her first playoff run, looked unfazed by the moment. Indiana's box score told one story, but the scoreboard told the bigger one, 77-60. The Dream, known for their offensive firepower, managed only 60 points all night. They shot under 38% from the field and just 5 of 19 from 3. Indiana's defense suffocated them, possession after possession, until there was no hope left. In the locker room afterward, White praised the group's resilience. She called it toughness, attention to detail, discipline. Boston pointed to hustle plays as the difference. Mitchell described the electricity she felt from the crowd after that third quarter run. Their words reflected what everyone had seen. A team battered by injuries, written off without its star, showing it could not only compete but dominate. The Fever had turned what looked like a season-ending blow into one of the most uplifting wins in franchise history. For Atlanta, the optics were devastating. A player calling out fans, a story that fell apart, and a loss that revealed deeper cracks. For Indiana, the contrast couldn't have been sharper. While the Dream tried to shift focus to the stands, the Fever kept pointing to the scoreboard, and the scoreboard never lies. Now it all comes down to Game 3. The series heads back to Atlanta, and both teams know the stakes. One win means moving forward to face Las Vegas or Seattle. One loss means the season ends in disappointment. For the Fever, the path is clear. Replicate that same suffocating defense, keep Mitchell in rhythm, protect Boston from foul trouble, and demand the same contributions from the supporting cast. They've already proven they can win without Clark. The question is whether they can do it again in enemy territory. Game 3 isn't just another playoff matchup. It's survival. It's the chance for a young team to shed the label of rebuilding project and announce themselves as a true contender. It's also a warning to the rest of the league. If Indiana can win this shorthanded, imagine what they will look like in the years ahead when their roster is healthy and deeper. The Fever have already reminded the WNBA that the lights are never too bright when the moment calls for resilience. Now they get the chance to prove it one more time. The Allisha Gray controversy will fade quickly. What will remain is the memory of Indiana's first playoff win in nearly a decade. That's the story fans will carry. That's the moment the league will remember. And that's the foundation the Fever can now build on, whether they advance or not. What do you think? Was Allisha Gray out of line in calling out those fans, or did the league mishandle the situation from the start?